Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. Today's video is on astral time travel. One of the many abilities that comes with conscious astral projection is the ability to travel in time. Suddenly, the experienced astral projector discovers that he can travel back to dinosaur times or forwards to watch the sun consume the earth in a big ball of red fire. I originally experimented with time travel due to my interest in history and my passion for speculative science fiction like Star Trek and the future, just basic curiosity about the future of humanity. In those experiments, I have encountered joy and sadness, as well as enormous life expanding possibilities, the severe limits, and the general astral laws governing time travel. Whenever I discuss the topic of astral time travel, I invariably get a few common questions, which I'd like to answer during this video, and perhaps one or two others as well. Okay, first question that comes up. Okay, if you could travel into the past, why don't you stop that little monster with the little mustache who started World War II? Question number two. If you can travel into the future, can you tell me who will be the next U.S. president or rap star? That last bit was especially funny because somebody just asked me that just a few weeks ago. I wrote back, I said, I couldn't tell you who the rap stars are right now, much less the ones in the future. Number three, why should I astral time travel? And number four, why don't you go public with your astral projection predictions to force everyone to believe that astral projection is real? All four of these questions seem reasonable to someone who has never astral time traveled, but has watched time travel movies coming out of Hollywood. However, the reality of astral time travel is infinitely more exciting and at the same time more restrictive than how movies portray time travel. Let's talk about past travel first. When I travel into the past, whether it be dino times to view giant crocodilians or perhaps catch a U.S. Civil War battle, I am an unseen ghost with zero ability to communicate or affect the proceedings of the past. As far as I know, or at least as far as I knew, the past is fixed and cannot be changed, at least by any efforts that I have ever tried. In the past, I can usually only spend a handful of minutes in my explorations before being forcibly yanked back into my physical body. As such, all I ever get are glimpses of the past without much substance. I won't talk about present because that's not really time travel in the strictest sense of the term. So let's get into the future. Traveling into the future has always been my favorite due to the following. I have always been interested in what the future holds for our race. Secondly, I soon discovered, by accident really, that as I traveled further and further into the future, the longer I could stay there, and the greater my ability to become visible and to interact with those future residents. In my trips to the end of Earth, I spent months in my explorations, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. My experiences with my tribe, located in the Indiana area, 12,000 to 15,000 years or so in the future, I was able to spend a number of years among them with only a handful of minutes transpiring here in the present. Let's get into some limitations, though, that I have observed in my travels. I've said the past is fixed and cannot be changed. This is the first limitation that I have found. This limitation is the prime reason for anybody's inability to alter the past. But philosophically speaking, for a moment here, even if it were possible to stop the Second World War, would it really be my right to make that decision for all of humanity? Perhaps a more stable leader would have emerged in the mustache guy's place, who would have led Germany to final victory, enslaving us all. Not to mention, without the WW2, we wouldn't have things like rockets, nuclear energy, computers, jet engines, and the advanced medical tech that we have now, as well as satellites that make mobile phones and other lightning-fast communication possible. All of these important inventions began due to that Second World War. You might say, well, they would have evolved eventually, perhaps. But things like the nuclear power, rockets, jet engines, all those required enormous amounts of investment by the various states. The nuclear power by the United States, jet engines, rockets, and sundry other things by the Germans. And those types of investments only happen typically when a state feels itself at risk, when it feels that its very existence depends upon this investment. Many of these technologies had been on the drawing board in the late 20s and into the 30s, but that's where they stayed because the money involved just wasn't available. So, these are just some of the things that even if one could alter the past, you would have no way of knowing exactly how a change would ripple throughout time. Even in an example which seems fairly straightforward after all, why wouldn't you want to stop a conflict that costs the lives of tens of millions of people? But that's why I picked that example, because it's so extreme. But even something that might seem that, well, that's a fairly easy thing to decide whether you should change or not, but even that would have profound implications and could have profound implications for your present once you return there. So bottom line would be, even if I discovered a way to do that, I don't think it would be my right to tinker with world history. I don't think that's something I'd be elected to do by the constituency of Earth, and I don't think it therefore would be my right to tinker with the history and the fate of mankind. An example that I think hits a lot closer to home, certainly for me and perhaps for those that you love, other than talking about big events like wars and what have you, would be my brother's divorce from his first wife. Many years ago, we were driving together when I asked him if he could change the past so that he never met his first wife. Would he choose to make this alteration in his personal timeline? I expected at least a few moments of silence while he considered my unusual question. Instead, he responded in the negative immediately. While she had wasted all of his money, was lazy, vindictive, with the IQ of an acorn squash, and had eventually cheated on my faithful and honorable brother, she had given him one precious gift: his daughter. If he changed that past, where he never met her, and spared himself all that heartache and misery that resulted from that first marriage, his beautiful daughter would have never been born. My brother's past, and that of the human species, is an intricate web of cause and effect. It's impossible to just pluck out or remove one undesirable link without affecting this impossibly complex chain of events that might end up radiating out to a present and future that is not better than the one you were personally, or perhaps trying to do it for the world, the one that you personally had selected. You can't just go to a spider web and just pluck out a little bit without all the other strands vibrating and radiating out to the periphery. So it's a very awesome thing when you think about it. Next, I've repeatedly used the English word future in this video. But in reality, I should really have used the plural futures. Humanity has free will, and as such, the further we proceed into the futures, the more possible futures astral projectors are confronted with. Let me give you an example. In 2016, I attempted to discover the identity of the winner of the presidential election. The first time I tried, I ended up seeing Hillary win in one particular projection, and the Donald coming in second. How were these disparate futures possible, I wondered. See, how could Hillary win in the first time I explored the future? And then in the second time I explored the future, I saw, the Donald win. How is that possible, I thought? Well, my theory, and this is just a theory, is that the projection where Hillary won was prior to her infamous basket of deplorables speech, where she ended up insulting a significant portion of the electorate, which is never really a good strategic move. Before that speech, I think she was destined to win. Afterwards, despite her half-hearted apology, I saw the future that would instead be realized by our current president as the winner. Her free will, and presumably that of her advisors, changed the future in favor of her opponent. The past may be fixed, but our future is very fluid. Due to this truth, I think we need to be wary of any so-called psychics who tell you that they are 100% certain of their future prediction. The existence of human free will reveals these people to be at least misled, or at the very worst, lying charlatans. The existence of possible futures is the second limitation of time travel. The third limitation is the most vexing for me, though. When I project into time, most especially the longer jumps, I lose consciousness and awaken in a random place. My theory is that my consciousness is pelted with millions of events as I'm proceeding into this future, and it becomes overwhelmed and just shuts down. So that's my theory as to why I lose consciousness. Sometimes I'm hovering over a mysterious ocean or lake. Other times I'm lying in a meadow or a farmer's field. I never know exactly where I will land. At least a good portion of the time, my basic year-range goal, though, is reached. I've gotten better at that type of target practice in my prior trials over and over again, but the geography of it is still very difficult. Now, this particular random location limitation is true for both past and future jumps. Only near-term trips allow me to maintain consciousness. Of course, in near-term trips, then my astral projection is limited to mere minutes. So I know in the movies, the DeLorean can be programmed to arrive at a specific time at a specific place, and so it makes finding information from the past and for the future very easy. Unfortunately, I don't have that DeLorean, and my trips are very, very haphazard. So, it makes trying to find specific information from specific areas. Very difficult. And even then, as I said before, when you're dealing with the future, you're dealing with possible futures. There is no such thing as a future that is engraved in stone. Humans still have free will, and they can and do use it, and can and do alter our present and our futures. The third question I've had people ask occasionally, and it quite frankly always stuns me. Remember, that question was, why would someone want to astral time travel? Or even in many cases, why would you want to astral project? Well, how about simple curiosity? I believe that everyone listening to this video has this very desirable personality trait. Curiosity is what got our ancestors down from the trees and eventually spreading all over the earth. Astral time travel allows us to view the wonders of the ancient past and the unimaginable tomorrows of the possible futures. Next, tourism and discovery. There's nothing wrong with tourism. If you have a friend who asks you seriously, what's the purpose of you going somewhere exotic on a vacation? Get a new friend. Besides, I've seen live dinosaurs. How many other people do you know who can say the same? I remember a log entry I made as a child in the early 70s that I saw some dinos with feathers who ran really fast, almost like birds. And keep in mind that my dinosaur books, and I had a lot of them that I had collected in the late 60s and early 70s, all of them pictured these slow-moving, dim-witted, reptilian-looking creatures, moving slowly and ponderously. I recall making a note dismissing my experience due to these differences. Of course, today we know that, in many cases, dinosaurs were a little bit more bird-like than they were reptilian-like. So, today that what I saw is borne out. I've also seen the passage of many ages, and I've realized in that process that everything physical is transitory, of the moment only. The only thing real and truly valuable that we possess are those we love and the friends who have volunteered to join us on this long voyage of exploration. I saved one of the more interesting questions for last, and that is, why don't I go public with my time travel astral projections and thereby try to force astral projection in general, and perhaps my wondrous predictions, down the throats of an unbelieving world? Well, first, I am a private family man with an executive position who is very happy with his comfortable and peaceful life. As we speak, I'm looking out over a treed area right in the back of my property on a beautiful flowing river. It's peaceful, it's quiet. I have only a handful of very, very quiet and very nice neighbors around me. I find this life very comforting. I also have a treasured daughter who is also an astral projector. She is a respected medical professional. I've decided to help others anonymously to learn to astral project through my postings on Reddit as Morgoth37 and on my YouTube channel, Astral Club. To date, my efforts have helped many to dispel their fears and learn astral projection. I expect to help many more. If I do as suggested by some of these commenters and make my poor and limited ability to see some future events public, my life and the lives of my family would be profoundly changed. I expect there would be many who would mock and call astral projection crazy and myself a mystical charlatan. Should my lottery or other predictions come true, my family and I would be besieged by the curious, the skeptics, the greedy, the needy, and quite possibly the government, Wall Street, and criminal elements wishing to exploit us. Forgive me, but I have no desire to exchange my family's peace and happiness for such chaos. I prefer to continue as I am, quietly helping those interested in learning to astral project. Perhaps one of them one day will choose to subject themselves to this media insanity that would come from a public disclosure. However, that disclosure will not come from me. I had a question recently which is very much in line with this topic, so I want to discuss it. I, over the years, have participated in a variety of what you might term astral classes. Typically, they are inhabited by a lecturer or lecturers who talks to a class of people who are currently in their astral body. However, most of them are what I call sleepwalkers. These are people who have either been taken out or have wandered somehow in a sleepwalking daze into this classroom environment, which to my eyes reminds me of the classrooms that I existed in my public school and university education. I don't know what it appears like to them. Chances are it appears to them in such a way that they would be comfortable. I call them sleepwalkers because they're basically unconscious. And I believe that the process of these classes is to help get advanced information into the minds of some of these people, hoping that some of it will sink in. I have become conscious through my experiments in astral projection over the years in a number of these classes. And so I've been able to consciously listen in. There's one particular one that occurred, and I had a little bit of fun, and perhaps you'll enjoy this. The topic was nonlinear reality and time, and the nature of time. The first topic I found blew my mind, and still does to this day, but they said that, the lecturer said that all time is happening right now, only at different quantum states. It only looks like the past, present, and future to us humans because of our severely limited abilities of perception. I was feeling a little curious, was feeling a little tricksy, if you will, and I decided to have some fun with the lecturer. So I put on an astral Batman suit. I took that form on and I raised my hand. First of all, the lecturer was surprised because typically sleepwalkers just are in a daze. Nobody's asking questions. But I guess I was curious enough that he asked me, yes, what's your question? And then before I could even talk, he was like, when are you from? He said, not where, when are you from? I said, the early 21st century, Earth, which was around the year 2000 at that time. So that's why I gave him that response. And then he said, well, what is with that costume? And I looked at him seriously and said, what costume? He then said, okay, what's your question? I said, well, how do you explain this simultaneous time thing? He explained it like this. He said, well, you could tell, I could tell he was dumbing it down because he had to. He said, you have helicopters in your time, don't you? I said, yes, of course. He said, well, imagine you were in a helicopter and you were hovering above a highway. Now, when you're on the highway in your vehicle, you're in the present, and all you can see is the area that's happening right now, right around your vehicle. I said, yes. He goes, well, in the helicopter, though, they have a much better viewpoint. They can see where you've been in the past, they can see where your car is now, and they can see where you're going to be in the future. He said, that's the best example I have to explain simultaneous time. I accepted him with that explanation. Then he got on to the next thing that really blew my mind. He goes, well, the next point is, what happens in the past can alter the present and future. I was like, yes, okay, everybody knows that. He goes, but also what happens in your future and your present can change your past. Now, that comment, when it was uttered to me back in 2000 or so, it just caused my head to buzz. And after that, I said, yeah, sure, whatever. I actually just left the class, took off, in my Batman suit, and I went astral projecting. Now, all this came back to me. I hadn't thought about this in a long time, but a Redditor by the name of Fetus Phoenix asked me this question about what I learned in these classes, and it stoked all this information again for me. So I started thinking about it, and I did a little bit of research. Now, what I know about quantum states and quantum physics, you could probably fit into an eyedropper for a mosquito. But I was able to find out some interesting facts which may point out to the truth of what this lecturer was talking about. First, let's talk about the speed of light real quick. Speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, or about 300 million meters per second. It's thought to be the maximum speed in our universe in normal space. I did some research though, and quantum mechanics, quantum physics is just breaking all kinds of barriers and just causing a lot of people's heads to spin. But this one particular article that was written for laymen talked about quantum entanglement, and this is when two particular particles are connected on a quantum level in some way, such that no matter how far apart they are, whether it's a meter, whether it's 100 or 1,000 or 3,000 light years, the minute you change the one particle state, the other one mimics it. Think about that for a second. If it's going 3,000 light years, in an instant, it is breaking the barrier. And that's amazing. He said, though, that it must be said, though, that distance isn't the only dimension that is seemingly ignored by quantum entanglement. Research conducted by many different physicists has revealed that particle pairs can communicate with one another along the timeline. Let me just reiterate that. Not only is it theoretically possible to change the state of one particle on Earth and another 3,000 light years away, but you can actually teleport to that particle 3,000 light years away or 3,000 years ago. And at least that is what the research ultimately is leading to. So if you had a super telescope, now keep in mind, when we look up in the night sky, we see the sun in the daytime, and we're seeing light that came from the sun somewhere around 10 minutes ago. When we look up into the sky, we're seeing light from stars based on how far they are from us. If we're seeing a star that's 50 light years away, we're seeing the light as it existed 50 years ago. So in essence, when we look up into the sky, whether we're looking at the sun, whether we're looking at the stars, we are looking into the past. Now, imagine that we had a super telescope, and this super telescope could not only show us a star, but it could show us a planet. It could show us a quantum entangled particle on a planet circling a star 3,000 light years away. If we change this quantum state of this particle here on Earth, instantly that same entangled particle on the planet circling that strange star 3,000 light years away would also be changed. So, in essence, we would be changing the past, because we would look up with our super telescope and we'd make that change, and instantly, using that super telescope, we would see light that was 3,000 years old, and we'd be able to see with this amazing, amazing telescope that, wow, that particle changed. So we, in essence, reached back into time and were able to affect the past from the present. And there's no reason why that wouldn't also work with the future. So this particular author suggests that this could be our gateway to time travel in the future. So perhaps those concepts that I blew my mind back in the year 2000 or so, and I couldn't understand, and even today I'm struggling to understand. Perhaps they were actually right, and I suspect those classrooms are implemented to help humans slowly progress, even if they're talking to sleepwalkers. Although I imagine there are many professors out there who are very comfortable with the idea of talking to sleepwalkers in their classrooms. Okay, well, that is the discussion of astral time travel today. Now, this has not been a how-to video. That will come later. I believe you need to be experienced projectors before you start really getting into astral time travel, because there's a lot of other things involved. But I wanted everybody to try to understand what's involved, so they had a better understand of what's possible, what's not possible, what are the limitations of astral time travel, if for no other reason than to answer some of their own curiosities and their own questions. You may have noticed there's a few changes on the Astral Club site. There are some ads now. I didn't do that for the money because, quite frankly, I could buy my own cup of coffee once a week or whatever. The idea here is YouTube goes a long way to recommending your videos when you're monetized. So that's why I did it. I want to reach more people. I want YouTube to help me to get more people to come to the site so I can help more folks to learn to astral project. I have implemented a Patreon site for Astral Club. There will be a link in the description and possibly the comments, I don't know. And if that's something that you're drawn to do, if you'd like to support this channel, if you'd like to support this work of helping your fellow club members and perhaps a lot of other folks to learn this very important ability to astral project, and you have a few extra dollars that you could spare a month, then that would be one way you could help support the channel and support that important work. So that's for this week. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you know someone who would be interested in this topic, please share it with them. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button and hit that bell so that you're always notified when I have a new video. I always enjoy your comments and questions, so please continue to leave those for me. And as I said, check out our Astral Plane Club website, and also check out the Patreon link for Astral Club if that's something that you're interested in doing. Well, as always, I will see you on the astral